preparing to live stream, setting up your meetings for custom streaming service. All right. We're live on YouTube. And I'm going to retweet that real quick. And then I'll hit record.
All right.
Oh, someone retweeted my Bitcoin blowback article from like a year ago. That's nice.
Someone's searching.
I have a secret admirer. What am I looking for? Okay.
What's up, stackers and Ken?
I'm going to stab you. It is pretty gay, I'm not gonna lie.
No, I like it. It's good.
Honest Hodl.
Who's that?
You should have a doppelganger that's dishonest Hodl.
Ooh.
All right.
I like that.
We're gonna record in 3, 2, 1. Oh. Record to the cloud. Salutations, Sassagers and Ken. You're listening to A Boy Named Pseu. That's Mr. Sue to you, aka Phil Gibson. Once again, we are live on the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast network, and I'm joined by the Lizard King of Bitcoin himself, Uncle Jim Morrison. What is up, Uncle Jim? How you doing today?
What's happening? Back again.
Back at it again.
Let's do it to it.
We do have some roofers on the roof making noise and shit. We got banana bread in the oven right now, so we might hear some noises. We got a cat who's hiding, so she might be noisy. Who knows? But let's just kick it. So thanks for tuning in last time. Oh, before we get going, just full disclosure, unlike the Federal Reserve System, full disclosure for us. Let's get into our sponsors. So big shout out and thank you to Bitbox at Shift Crypto Bitbox 02. If you learn anything from this series of going through the Creature of Jekyll Island, money in that bank account of yours, not actually your money, but what is your money? What can be your money is Bitcoin, except when it's on an exchange. So don't do that and go get yourself a God, what's the thing called? A hardware wallet from Shift Crypto. Bitbox
Signing device.
To a signing device. Call it that. I like calling it a quill. I think we should do that. But whatever you want to call it, just go get one. Get 5% off too with Bitcoin Made Simple. All caps, no spaces. If you want, you can probably just put it in all as one word and not capitalize it. Whatever, you're fine. But yeah, Shift Crypto. And also, full disclosure, shout out to Movies Plus, led by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Corey Tusek, who is the brainchild behind the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast network and podcast. And big shout outs by popular demand, and by popular demand I mean myself, there is The Forecaster, a great documentary on Martin Armstrong and how he got completely fucked by the feds and his algorithmic basically prediction computer system that basically predicted like crashes in Capital Flight, and they basically fucked him and got him like in a dozen years of prison because he wouldn't give it up. So I'm really very happy that we're getting some pretty serious content on that platform, because it's just going to be this platform where, you know, think of Netflix but not cucked, pretty much. So go check that out as well. And without further ado, let's just get into it. So again, we're covering chapter 2 of the book review of The Creature from Jekyll Island. Got to a lot of listens to that, so obviously we're doing something right here, and a lot of people, not enough people, know exactly how this shit works, and so we're going to put in the hard work so you don't have to. And the name of this chapter is, the name of the game is Bailout. So spoiler, it is. And basically us as the taxpayers or the plebs in the world are basically paying for the bad behavior of the central banking system or the Federal Reserve System with not our tax money, the hidden tax of inflation, because again, they print it out of nothing. So let's just jump into that. So let's just understand that this monetary system is just based on events that are really just well-established rules that the politicians and bankers follow rigidly, as the author likes to say. No, cat, no, you can't go out. Sorry. Fucking
He likes
dog
to
food
say
stuff there.
no cat.
No,
He likes to say no cat. No, that's what
no
happened.
cat.
Stand by. Thank
No
you.
cat. Why can't you just behave? Behave, bitch. What was I saying? So basically, they just follow strict, rigid rules that they know how to play, and people in the world don't know how to play. And the fact is that to understand how all this shit works, it's that the banks are all the money that the banking system has created is really out of nothing through an elaborate, not so elaborate process of making loans. So here's how this shit really works. So the banks are lenders, and they make money off giving loans, which are given to their customers or borrowers with money that they literally create out of nothing. And again, it's not really out of nothing. It's just credit. But yeah, it's printed out of essentially nothing. So these loans are assets because they earn interest by generating, that's how they generate their profit. And the bank deposits, which is in your case, your money, are liabilities because your money is just sitting there. It's just not generating any profit or anything, it's just sitting there. It doesn't do squat for the banks. And however, the banks hold value in those said liabilities because at the same time, they are there to, the banks use those liabilities or your money that's sitting there to cover their own losses. So basically, it's like they steal your money that you have sitting there and supposedly secure, that supposedly is being secured in a bank account with them to cover their asses. Basically, when they lend that money out and there's no, the money's not paid back, they basically kind of like use your money, sort of like a bail-in, to cover their asses. So essentially, banks don't want you to pay back your loan if you take a loan out with them, because that's how they make their bread and butter. They make money off the interest that you pay them. It's kind of like proof of indebtedness.
Right. They don't make. They're not making any money off of you repaying the principal on it. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it's the perpetual debt cycle, which I think is name of the a section in this chapter, but they depend on you staying in debt forever. So this proof of indebtedness is their proof of profit, or their profit again is the interest, or as Tom Luongo likes to say, the VIG, which is like a mafia, like mob term. But a bank's favorite customer is anyone that keeps staying in debt, which the best customer in that case would be like a country, because there's no record of a country really ever paying back their debt ever in history. And countries and large corporations are the ones that take out the largest amounts, which means more VIG for the banks. And so basically, to prevent defaults, banks just roll over that debt to the next year. And that way, the banks keep getting paid their interest. And if that fails, then banks just reschedule or like refinance that loan, meaning the borrower gets a change up in the loan. So deposits aren't actually payable on demand. They should rather be called time deposits, not demand deposits. So they just reschedule. The borrower gets more cash, very, very high time preference, fiat mindset, like more cash for spending. And essentially, it gets them further into debt. And they don't feel it immediately or even on a month-to-month basis because their payment's lower. So again, just refinancing.
Yeah, it's the extend and pretend.
Yeah, extend and pretend. Kick the can down the road, as our government does. So going back to like a defaulted loan, if a loan defaults, therefore the costs that the bank receive are little of tangible value. It just shows up on the ledger as a reduction in assets without any corresponding reduction in liabilities. So, asterisk here, depositors' money remains a liability. Again, some of this is going to be redundant, but I think it's very important to just, state this again. Depositors' money remains a liability on the bank's balance sheet, which means that the banks are obligated to pay them their money when requested, quote unquote, again, on demand, which becomes a burden for that bank when they don't have the customer's money because they loaned up. Again, the system incentivizes these banks, and Jim's going to cover this later, but basically to, as I mentioned in the last chapter, to loan up. Everyone's incentivized to act irresponsibly. Well, really, the large banks, because they're the ones that get the bailout eventually, and small banks, competitors in the free market, get fucked. So let's identify the problem, defaults, and then the solution. And again, redundancy, but redundancy is important in the subject matter. So for a default, if the bank has bad loans and they exceed the size of the assets, the banks become technically insolvent and they have to close their doors. And so the first rule of survival here is avoid writing off large bad loans, and if it's possible, to at least continue receiving interest payments. And again, that's done through rolling over the debt, rescheduling, refinancing. And so these endangered loans are rolled over and increased in size. And this provides the borrower with money to continue paying interest, plus fresh new funds for new spending, because that's basically how in a fiat Keynesian society, everything keeps going. More easy money and credit spending, and everything's gravy until it's not. So we'll asterisk hyphen, customer gets a new loan, more easy money for upfront spending, and a longer term with lower interest rate to make it easier to eventually pay back that loan, which again, paying back the loan is never the goal, because otherwise the bank stops making money off the sucker or the borrower from interest payments. And the basic problem is not ever solved. It's just postponed and made worse ultimately when the hens come to roost. So what's the banking cartel's actual solution? Have the federal government step in and have guaranteed payment of the loan if the borrower defaults, or if it goes
essentially, they become
the
cosigner. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
and I'll have Jim take that over as well eventually. So how does this happen? Protect the public play, and this is just basically somehow the banks have to convince Congress, kind of like a team of lobbyists essentially. Right. They got to convince Congress that if you don't bail out this bank that the majority of the country depends on, because echoes of too big to fail might sneak back into your ears, then the public's gonna be screwed. So you need to step in, and the burden of this loan is eventually shifted to from the bank's ledger to the taxpayer, and not with our taxes. Again, it's just we feel it eventually through the hidden tax of inflation. So what is the last resort? And again, these are just these last points, kind of high level overview, and Jim's gonna just do the solid deep dive here. But the last resort is, or I guess the second to last resort, is going to the FDIC. So if all fails, the bank's forced to be insolvent, they use the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, pay off the depositors. And the FDIC is not actually insurance, because the presence of moral hazard is at play. And this goes back to tweaking incentives to act irresponsibly and not be punished for that irresponsible behavior. So this moral hazard makes the thing that supposedly FDIC is protecting against much more likely to happen. And so a portion of the FDIC funds are derived from assessments against the banks, which maybe Jim can open up a little bit, but ultimately they're just paid by the depositors themselves. And so the ultimate end game then, if that fails, is the Fed bailout. And so when these funds run out, the balance is provided by the Fed or the Federal Reserve System with new freshly created money whether that comes from treasuries or whatever. And so this just basically floods the economy. That's where we eventually feel the inflation. So, Jim, why don't you take the wheel?
Start here.
Take the wheel with that beautiful Jesus beard of yours. With let's see here. Where did I tell you to pick it up?
Let's talk it out here. Well, you just gave a whole overview basically of the whole chapter, I guess, here. So
yeah.
Protecting the public. Let's see. I think maybe there we wanted to start. Yeah, I think you kind of, like you said, eventually the day of reckoning comes, where the borrower can never, realizes they can never repay the capital, and they just like refuse to pay any interest on it at all, right? So this is time for the final maneuver, right? So I guess the banks can absorb the losses, right, of from these bad loans, like to multinational corporations, like Phil said, and foreign governments, but it's not, like that's not according to the rules, right? So where do I want to start here?
Pick it up from the cosigner, because when I was reading this, like
with the FDIC,
yeah,
or no, excuse me, with the government,
yeah,
yeah. Where did the guaranteed? 1 second. Yeah, I had it here somewhere. Yeah. So they become the cosigner on the loan. So then losses are finally, so the losses will then be lifted from the bank's ledger, right, and placed on the backs of the American taxpayer in essence. Where was I at here? Yeah. So once that happens, though, how do they get the money back then, right? So the money now it begins to move into the banks through complex systems and federal agencies and stuff like that, international agencies, and direct subsidies. So basically what these agencies and stuff are doing is acting as a mechanism to extract payments from the American people, right, and channel them back to the deadbeat borrowers, who then send them to the banks, right, to service their loans. So it's like a very convoluted system, and how they set it up, how they want it to work, where it funnels all the money back to them essentially, right? And that's the way that the Federal Reserve. Here, let's start from the beginning a little bit. Kind of the banks, knowing that they are going to go under or whatever, or bankrupt, said, "Hey, federal or government, we need you, since we are so big, or whatever, and the American people need us. We need you to co-sign or say that you will pick up the loan or whatever if said borrower goes under or cannot repay the loan, right?" And that is essentially they become the cosigner. And what they do then is saying, we will be the lender of last resort, and basically push everything to the American people. And that's, like I said, that's how they repay and how that happens. And the American people don't even understand that. They don't even understand what's going on really, but they think it's like, oh, we need this corporation, we need this bank to actually survive or do anything. So it's okay. And, that's how it is. Well, we're going to have to just get through it this time. Like there might be some inflation, so be it. And like, that's how it's been forever.
As opposed to like your local credit union, like no one's going to give a shit about that.
Sure. That's a little bit, better place to bank at, they recommend banking there because it's a little more personal. And yeah, so let's see, where do we want to go there then? That's the guaranteed.
So, like getting a little bit about just in general how the bank would compensate their losses, either through profits or like stockholder equity.
Yeah, I think
because I didn't really consider that, because like just getting into this stuff, I didn't think of, oh yeah, well, because like a large bank is probably public and has shares and people are invested in them, and it's kind of like akin to basically like we were DMing back and forth to each other, and how this is basically the cartel, the banking cartel of people that met at Jekyll Island were basically like the Ethereum Foundation bag holders, and how basically they're pumping their bags and they have the voting rights, they have the most stake, and they are dependent on the Fed bailout, and they're able to sell their stock first before the public retailer plebs get screwed. Sure, and so they basically cover their own asses before anyone else. So it's kind of like I mean, that I guess in that scenario, that's when the banks would see a loss because the shareholders are selling off their stocks, right? Can you just kind of open it up and maybe like differentiate a
Well,
little
if they're, yeah, so I think how we were, hang on a second. I gotta turn these notifications off. This is fucking annoying. Walton, Jesus Christ. Like, sorry, hold on.
Do not disturb is a godsend.
Shit. Huh? I can't figure it out.
So
Anyways,
do not disturb is a godsend.
yeah. So fuck, where were we again? Oh my god. Hold on.
Compensating the loss, like a bank has a decision to either compensate the loss.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about
their profits or stakeholder equity.
So the accounting equation.
Pointing.
Can you hear me? Shit.
Yeah.
So the accounting equation, like I said, assets equal liabilities plus stockholders equity, like I was explaining the other day. So if these banks have, so they're putting, so you go to them, you borrow money from them, right? They take your money and that is a liability, right? Then they take your money and they lend it out to somebody else and that becomes an asset to them, right? So it's actually a bookkeeping magic kind of thing, a ledger, if you will, ledger bookkeeping, smoke and mirrors in a way, because they're taking your money, right, and then lending it out and that's becoming an asset then, right? So when that borrower cannot repay their loan, the bank either has to, on one end, right? So since that is a liability to them and the borrower does not have any assets or collateral to actually make up for that or whatever, then the bank has to make up for that liability somehow. How are they going to do that? Either with profits from that year that they make from basically other interest, because that's the only revenue a bank basically has, or from fees, or from their stockholders' equity. And why is it? Because we need to balance the accounting equation, like I said, which is assets equals liabilities plus stockholders' equity. So that's what they have to do. And they don't like to do that. Obviously, like we said, they don't want to dip into their capital, the shareholders' capital that they put up to start this cartel. Nor do they want to take from their profits that they made this year. Sure, they can take a hit a little bit here and there. They can all, but then, like we said, they're backed or they're co-signed by the federal government, which says, hey, it's okay. Then they say, oh, go ahead, more money or credit, whatever it may be. And then they just, extend and pretend, like I said. So in that, you can kind of see that, there's some bookkeeping magic going on here and alchemy kind of in a way, because they're just actually, it basically is all accounting magic, really. They're on a ledger system. They're basically, writing assets and liabilities into existence, or taking and moving here and here without any sort of backup, or not even back, but like, it's not any real substance behind it. It's literally, accounting, smoke and mirrors, magic, whatever you want to call it, alchemy. So I think, yeah.
And I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just wondering if you want to like open up a little bit about how a bank can really be quite prosperous in just being insolvent.
Yeah. And that's, that's kind of how I was saying, it's just these mere entries on the ledger that are just, it's creative bookkeeping. Like it's like, yeah, when I found out, like when I first was reading about this and everything, I'm like, what the hell? And then like when I found Bitcoin, I kind of tied the two, because I'm in accounting or whatever, and I've done this for my majority of my life, whatever. When I found out Bitcoin was like an immutable ledger, nobody can fuck with, I'm just like, whoa. Like that was one of the first things I'm like, holy shit, because I understand the system now and how screwed it is. And then you're telling me like you can have a ledger that nobody's going to mess with and it can't be changed. I'm like, okay, this is something, right? And that was one of the first things that kind of got me interested in diving deeper down that rabbit hole. But in terms, of the Federal Reserve System, it's just like, whatever, let's make any entry we want. And then I guess when the problem arises, like I said, when the depositor comes back and wants their money out and they don't have it or whatever. But so let's see, what else do I want to talk about here? Oh, like this, this is an example I want to talk about too. Like a hat check. When you go to a I don't know, whatever, go to a dance, a ball, whatever, and you're wearing a hat or whatever, or a coat check, right? You go to the coat check and you hand it to the coat check person, you get your ticket thing, and you expect, when you go back and get your coat, that is going to be there and they're going to give it to you, and that they didn't lend it out to somebody else, right? So, like we expect all the hats and the coats to remain there and at the time that we go there to get them back. But on the other hand, if you think about the bank and you take that same example, they're lending out your hats and your coats. So when you do go get your coat, it's not there. And like you said earlier, that they should be calling them time deposits, right? Not demand deposits, because a demand deposit is, let's say everybody goes to the bank and demands their money now. Do they have it? Do they have 100% back, everybody's money? And no, and they don't, obviously, we know that. So we're saying we should call them time deposits, because when will I get these? What time am I going to get, my deposit that I gave to you guys when you're calling them demand, and I should be getting them on demand, right? But yeah, it's kind of, it's scary, kind of like, not scary, but it's eye-opening and interesting getting into this and seeing like all the accounting magic going on behind the scenes. It's crazy.
I like to think on a Bitcoin standard, we're all wearing hats again, or is that too fiat-y? What do you think?
What do you mean? Wearing hats?
Like hat check, like fancy hats.
I get you. Yeah.
On a Bitcoin standard, do we all like value quality hats again, or is that too frivolous and fiat?
Personal preference, I think. I mean, I'd wear one, I'd wear one.
I mean, why did that stop? I mean, you would always wear like a hat with your suit and whatnot.
Like a top hat?
Yeah.
Just the times, maybe. I don't know.
I guess.
What do you wear a top hat? I mean, yeah.
Or canes.
Canes, well, I don't know. It's more pimp-esque,
I guess. No, good point. Good points all around, really.
Yeah.
Quality. But no, it's just it really is like magic. And at least on Bitcoin layer 1, at like the mining level, the ledger level, the node level, like you cannot change that. It's literally like trying to like laser out gold cinder blocks out of like the cyberspace ledger.
You got to prove it. You got to prove the work.
What it is.
Yeah, you got to prove the work if you want to fuck it up. You want to 51% of tag, you want to rework, whatever you want to do, prove it, right? You got to show me the proof. You got to undo all of this proof of work for the past 13 years. And yeah, good luck, right? Which I wanted to talk about actually. Yeah, like the FDIC, I think too, because that kind of like plays into it,
yeah. Open that up a bit. Like, what is the FDIC,
I mean,
Jim?
It was basically, Federal Deposit Insurance Company,
corporation.
So they're based corporation, whatever. They're basically, guaranteeing every insured deposit will be paid back regardless of the financial position of the bank that you're depositing your money into. So, I mean, I guess it's usually described as an insurance fund but that's very like deceptive. Okay. It's not, they're set up. Why
isn't it actually an insurance fund?
Because they're fun, because in essence, the depositors of the American people are basically actually funding it through either banking fees that they will increase if they need to. And what was I going to say? Moral hazard. That was you. I think you brought that up earlier. Moral hazard. Like that's actually the, what an underwriter would say insurance is, if there is any moral hazard, then, in that situation, the policyholder has little incentive to, like avoid or prevent, what was it? Yeah, that which is being insured against. So like, when moral hazard is present, I think I had it here. Yeah, when moral hazard is present, it's normal for people to become more careless, and then the likelihood increases that whatever they're being insured on or being insured against would actually happen, right? So let's see, where's that example I had here? Where'd it go? Yeah, so an example, a government program forcing everyone to pay an equal amount. This is great, to fund and protect them from expense of parking fines. So like every, like, this is great. So it's absurd proposition, right? Like they're going to make everybody, they're going to start a program and force everyone to pay an equal amount to into this fund to protect them from the expense of parking fines. So if we're paying money to protect us from getting parking tickets, right? Then what? Just about everybody is basically soon going to be getting parking tickets, right? And then two, excuse me, since there now would be so many of the parking tickets, the taxes to pay those tickets would greatly exceed the previous cost of paying without the so-called protection. So like you would just be like, screw it, I'm just going to get a bunch of parking tickets because me funding it is actually exceeding me actually getting the ticket, if that makes sense, right? So so it's like you're depositing your money too into the bank, and then you're also paying for the insurance on it as well, when they're saying that they set this FDIC insured company up for the borrower, in the case that this bank, isn't in good financial standing and they go bankrupt, that, if they're not, then they'll be able to pick up the tab and you'll be fine. Or, you'll never lose that money that you deposited, which in essence is a joke.
You're paying double as a depositor in like fees, and you're paying again as a taxpayer.
Exactly.
And so something that made me think here. So where is it? So depositors are told their insured accounts are protected in the event their bank should become insolvent. So to pay for this protection, each bank is assessed a specified percentage of total deposits. Basically, this goes back to loaning up. It incentivizes banks to be reckless and give out bad loans so they get more interest. But it's okay because we got the nice FDIC here to bail us all out.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's guaranteed you're gonna get fucked and lose your money.
Yes, is like this. The FDIC increases the likelihood that what is being insured against will actually happen. So it's not a solution to the problem. It's like part of the problem. Yeah. So,
and I should have quoted this from chapter 1 last time, but it's not a matter of like the banks failing the system failed the banks.
Of course. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
that's how the system was inherently set up to fail, kind of, in a way. It's a debt-based system. So what were you saying?
Oh, just like, what would real insurance look like? Also, what would that look like on a Bitcoin standard too?
Real insurance, you would be so. Well, if it was set up through a bank, so they're saying in this case the FDIC is saying that they're funding it, right? But if we're on a Bitcoin standard, like, I guess that entity who said they would be funding the insurance would actually be funding it, right? Or I don't really necessarily think that insurance. I mean, you would. So if there's a loss, there would be a loss taken, and you're going to take the hit necessarily on a hard money standard, whatever it may be, right? I think that's what would kind of happen. But hang on, I had something on this too.
I mean, it'd be voluntary, first of all.
That's what I was going to say. It'd be voluntary. Yeah, it'd be a blessing. That's funny. Right. Yes, it would be voluntary, totally voluntary. That's the thing. And I guess that's where I was just kind of getting at, where I was saying, I don't really know if insurance would be needed. Well, maybe it would for some people or whatever, but you're right. It'd be voluntary, and like in which like it's geared its rates to the actual risk. Like the rates would be set to the actual risk that somebody assessed or whatever that person was undergoing, right? So here, I think I had it here. Banks with solid loans on their books would be able to obtain protection for their depositors, right? So, and you
They'd
would
have the
go,
funds because they would be incentivized to actually act responsibly
yes. So the
as
depositors
opposed to
would,
loan up and not have any money as a
right, and the
fractional reserve.
depositors would, right, and the depositors would instantly know, that without need to investigate any further, that this bank can, do that and can back it up and has insurance to back up whatever I deposit, right? And then so banks that failed to meet those minimum standards obviously would have no customers. Like we said, it's pretty simple, like a hard money standard. Those that are honest and show their proof of work and actually, say what they're going to do and meet their contractual agreements, if they, those are the ones that'll stand in business and practice. The ones that lie about or, go against what they say they're going to do, obviously will fail on a hard money standard like that, because basically everything is voluntary and everything's out in the open for people to see in a way. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it just echoes back to the wildcat banking era. You have banks failing and you have banks not failing. So it just sends like a market signal. And again, in like a true, like free open market, everything will be voluntary. And so just incentives like realign. And, if you have banks fail, maybe it would kind of be like a game theoretical thing where it forces other banks like, oh, well, we're open for business. And by the way, look at our reserves here. And so it would just kind of like by default set this standard, this like new practice of this is how banking should be.
Right.
So it like the signals are just like so much clearer, and it just sucks. We don't see that in really anything, not just banking. I mean, health insurance, insurance in general.
Yep. No. Yeah. It's like a voluntary private insurance program would work better.
Yeah.
100%.
Just to add on to this, from the book, FDIC is not protection. It's not insurance in any sense of the word. It's merely a political scheme to bail out the most influential members of the banking cartel, like we mentioned before, when they get into financial difficulty. And as we already seen, the first line of defense in this scheme is to have large defaulted loans restored to life by a congressional pledge of tax dollars. That should fail, and the bank can no longer conceal its insolvency through creative bookkeeping.
There it is.
There it is again. It is almost certain that anxious depositors will soon line up to withdraw their money, which the bank does not have. The second line of defense, therefore, is to have the FDIC step in and make those payments for them. And of course, bankers don't want this to happen because it's a last resort. And if the bank's rescued in this fashion, then management's fired. It's kind of like the Mitt Romney, like private equity kind of scheme, right? You go in, get it out. And we'll probably get into this in the next episode where banks fail and they get bought out by other banks. But essentially what happens here is if a bank's rescued, then the manager is fired, and then what's left over of the business is, again, absorbed by another bank. And if the value of the stock is going to plummet, opportunity for y'all to short. But that's just an effect of the small stockholders again. And then those with controlling interest, again, the cartel members, because this is why this was set up. Like, they're not the last ones holding the bags. They create the bags.
They protect their capital. They want to protect their wealth. Yeah. And
so basically those with the controlling interest and those in management know, like, this is insider trading. They know long in advance of the pending catastrophe that's about to happen. And they're able to just like bulk their shares, kind of like the George Soros thing, where he just like saw the pound crash and like bought it all up. And this is insider trading 101. Like, this is Pelosi's playbook. The people that create the problem are the ones that benefit from the problem, because they create the rules of the game, which is bailout.
Yeah.
And did we already cover how the FDIC can't actually be adequately funded yet?
Did we? Maybe not. Basically, they'll never be adequately funded. They'll never have enough money to cover its potential liability, right? If that amount, I guess what was I saying? If that amount, yeah, were in existence, like it would be held at the banks, right? If they actually had that amount of money. So, but they basically operate, where's that? They basically, shit. Oh yeah, they typically hold. Yeah, that was the numbers. $1.20 to every $100. That's what they typically hold, or on their covered deposits. So that's what
Used
the FDIC
to, I
is holding.
guess. I mean, now the requirement's 0, right?
No, right. Well, right. Yeah, this is that's typically at the time of writing. Yeah, that's at the time of writing. But yeah. So it's like 99%. It's yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't know where we want to go with that.
I mean, it's basically just emphasizing that this is how they prosper, which is in.
Well, it's basically like, here, we're setting up this fund, this agency, whatever, to make it look like you guys are protected, in essence, which is just another thing that we as the bankers or the cartel can set up and use as another tool to mitigate our losses from any borrower not being able to repay or service their loan. You know, that's what it is. It's just another tool or, you know, agency that they set up to, yeah, you know, help them mitigate their losses and shift the losses from the borrower not repaying their or servicing their debt to the taxpayer. But
yeah, because they have the full faith and credit of the United States government.
Yep, so, lender of last resort, right?
Yeah,
the cosigner. Yeah. They're the cosigner. They, you know, the cartel went to the to the government, to the Congress, and said, hey, like, you know, like we said earlier, we're a big bank. People need us. We're a big corporation. We're big airlines. People need us. Whatever. We can't go under. You know. Okay, we'll cosign. We'll back everything. We'll be the lender of last resort for the borrowers.
And I mentioned this earlier, but like, this is when the Fed issues more treasury bonds, which that's the money that they create out of nothing, because by the Fed's like demand, like this is fiat by decree. They're like, okay, we're going to issue these treasuries, Treasury Department, you sell those. And this is what the new money is going to be. They're going to issue more debt. And that's basically the full faith and credit of the United States government, that you can depend that they're going to be able to do that because they can, because everyone is basically forced to pay off all their debts to them, and everyone believes this shit. But again, it's important. Don't fucking bite me. What are you doing? Oh, that's where I hid the treats. Okay. Cool. I'm like, why the fuck you biting my foot? I was checking my pockets earlier. There.
Oh my God.
So remember, and this is in the book, italicized. So the public picked up the portion of these IOUs, which are the basically, I guess, treasuries, because when you issue a treasury, it's a bond. You buy a bond, a promise of like, hey, you're going to buy some debt, but don't worry. We're the Fed going to pay you back, because you can trust the government. And again, this is how a government survives, rolling over the debt. And I will get into like a little tangent about that later, like an epiphany moment that I shared with you the other day. But basically, the public picks up the portion of these IOUs, the bonds, and then the Fed buys the rest. So if there is a monetary crisis and the size of that loan is, you know, big enough, then the Fed's gonna pick up the entire issue. So the Fed has no money either. Okay, so its response is creating money out of nothing, with an amount of brand new money equal to the IOUs, and through magic of central banking, FDIC is fully funded. So this new money just gets sent to all the banks and just used to pay off their depositors.
Yep.
And that's essentially how the FDIC basically works. FDIC goes to the Fed. And yeah. So thank God for the Fed, right? That's basically what the full faith and credit of the United States government is. Everyone gets paid back. No one loses their money. So isn't everything hunky-dory?
The doors stay open.
No,
Yeah.
it's actually not, because people start blaming, their grocery store for raising prices, because eventually, as we are seeing to this day, quite evidently, with 8 point whatever percent like CPI, inflation happens and it hurts. And I think today we're actually seeing the hens coming home to roost. So
yep. Yeah, you just see where how that's funny you said that too, or not funny, but like it's a great point. People start blaming, their local grocery guy for raising prices, or the mechanic, or the whatever it may be, for raising prices. But in essence, it's not their fault. They have to do it because of this money printing. When they're increasing the supply, it's pretty simple: supply and demand. If you increase the supply of money, every dollar you hold, or whatever you're holding the money in, your purchasing power goes down, right? And that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
And people, and that's why I guess they call it, the hidden tax of inflation, I guess. But it's, if you really dig into it, it's plain and clear right in front of your eyes. And it's sad to see, people blaming, the people that they're buying, goods and services from, because it's, in essence, really, it's not their fault. But yep.
Yeah.
Don't
again, that's
the supply.
Tie
that into Bitcoin.
If people dig into it, which they don't. And I love how the book takes that example of the Phil Donahue interview. Someone in the crowd stands up. I forget which crisis it was, but he's just like,
yep.
Oh no, it was the SNL savings and loan crisis, I think. Yep. But basically he's like, why can't the government pay for the funds instead of the taxpayers?
And everybody's like, yeah, why can't the government pay? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, they do. And you do as well. But
yeah,
it just
you
kind
do
of
too.
Shows the ignorance here.
Yep.
So yeah. Kind of going back to like a macro way to think about this. Where was my note here that I put here? I don't know where to go. This is a great time to talk about our sponsor again, the BitBox02 by Shift Crypto. If you haven't pissed your pants yet in this episode, then you probably should. And then once you clean that up, you should go buy a new BitBox, a hardware wallet, to put your real money, Bitcoin, on it and keep it safe and secure. Keep it secret, keep it safe, as Gandalf likes to say. And use the promo code Bitcoin Made Simple to get 5% off. Are you sneezing? Or are you sneezing? So yeah, Bitcoin Made Simple, 5% off. Get your BitBox, lock up your coins.
Put it in the box.
But let's see here. I mean, it's silly how it's basically cool how governments kind of get away with just extending and pretending. I mean, everyone does, but like they're the ones that benefit the most. And so I basically was just kind of putting two and two together. Like, so the U.S. isn't in ways like both the lender and the borrower of last resort, or is like the real lender of last resort.
Yeah.
In this case, is the real lender of last resort the American taxpayers, if they're the ones borrowing? I mean, if they're the ones buying the debt. I just kind of thought that was interesting. But when the U.S. kind of borrows from the lender, the American taxpayer or the investor, it does this again by issuing treasuries, also known as monetizing the debt. That's how they fund all this shit. By decree, like, okay, we're going to do this, and this treasury is going to be this much and whatever. And then people, I think before Bitcoin, people looked at bonds the way we kind of think of Bitcoin. It's putting our hard-earned capital into something that's safe and secure. And in legacy finance, people always talked about how bonds were like a risk-free investment, right? Because again, it goes back to the full faith and credit of the United States government.
Right.
But when the US government serves the interest on that debt or pays out the coupon, that means that the US, again, like pays the coupons to the treasuries and the investors. But it's also like, if the US wasn't in debt, then there would be no interest to pay. And so it like defeats like the idea, the purpose of this investment vehicle to a sense. So it just kind of like emphasizes how much of a facade that instrument is. Because like
US, treasuries,
yeah.
I mean, well, not, I guess, I mean, depending on when, right? When we were talking about them, like, 50 years ago or whatever. And then what kind of a monetary policy or monetary standard were we on then, right? I mean, because you go back, 20, 30, 40 years ago, like you said, you can earn whatever percent on a bond and it was good. And you knew that it would be backed, by the government or whatever, that it's a risk-free investment that, you should be investing in those. And then as through time, we've seen what's happened, right? And but what people don't understand as well is like that's how the system was set up. It's a fractional reserve system, which means it's a debt-based system, which means that it's in essence going to zero. It is set up like that. It is set up to inflate the supply of the currency that the people are using. Like that is literally how the system was set up. So it's kind of like that's how it's set up. So this was supposed to happen. Like, how can you not see this sometimes in a way, right? But like, yeah.
So I found my notes. I'm just gonna pull on this autistic tangent string, and then we can wrap it up. But again, like, I think it's really funny in the legacy system. Like, bonds replaced Bitcoin. I mean, I guess gold like was the substitute for Bitcoin, but bonds were like the second option. And again, this is kind of like even on like a quasi gold standard, central banks held a shit ton of gold. And they still do, and they have been accumulating. But like that aside, the value proposition to an investor to buy a government bond is that is risk-free. So the investor buys the treasury bond in the first place to store value of said invested money by expecting the interest to cover and hedge the amount of inflation that should occur. And so high coupons or the payout rates means high inflation. And so therefore governments that want these coupons, the rates, yields, whatever, they want them to be as low as possible. Otherwise, if they get too high, then people start to question whether or not the government can actually pay out that coupon. And so if they do, which they can by printing money out of nothing, and that implies that there's heavy inflation in the economy. And so another thing to consider, well, if the government can actually pay out that interest, call it like 5%, then what does that mean to the value of the underlying currency itself? So it's not exactly risk-free, is it?
No.
And when America rolls over its debt, it's fine and it's necessary. Because if the US paid all of its debt, then there'd be no more treasuries to buy. Because that would mean America's debt would be paid off. But they are dependent on being in debt, just like the rest of the banking system.
Yeah, it's like you know what I mean? Like if everybody paid back all the debts, if all the debts were paid back, there wouldn't be any more money in existence. Yeah. So.
And like from the top,
they've lent out over 100%.
Yeah, like and from like the top down, it's like the incentives of the Federal Reserve System create this contagion where that network they create relies on large scale entities being in debt in order for stakeholders to remain profitable and powerful. Yep. And what entity do you want to keep powerful more than like the government, the Fed, the banking system in the US? And participants are incentivized to profit off that function of the broken system. And we didn't touch on this, but banks could buy out their debtors, but they'd lose money from the interest,
right?
And what power and control they have over them. And we'll get into this in later chapters, but this is why they, I guess, like don't buy out the third world countries because they have soft power influence over them. But eventually they kind of do. But they lose. But basically, if they bought out their debtors, they lose money from the interest, and the shareholders of the banks would suffer major loss, as we covered. but
Right.
it's just crazy how this is the standard.
There's no interest for them to do it. Right. Like we're
Yeah.
going to take you take over the country, you just capture them by loaning them whatever, like you're loaning them a lot of whatever money under the assumption or facade that, we're helping this country grow because they're a third world country, or we're bringing economic growth to this country by loaning them this as the World Bank, as the IMF, blah, 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 which is, also intermingled with the United States and whatever big countries. And knowing that like these third world countries are not going to be able to pay it back at all, and that's how they, they capture them, and then they can funnel and do whatever they want and funnel any money through them and use them as another like mediary or whatever to extract money or flush money through them and bring it back to the shareholders. Like it's kind of sick, honestly, if you think about it.
It's a racket.
Yeah, a racket. Yeah, it is. But yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, good shit.
Yeah, I think we covered everything inside it out. And I don't know. Bail out.
Yeah.
Name of the game is bail out. All right. Well, I think we can bail on this. So
yeah. What's
Jim,
what do we got? Chapter 3.
chapter
Protectors of
3,
the public.
Protector. Yeah. So we're gonna be opening up case by case examples, and I was like jumping ahead and listening to this chapter, and it really just does solidify how the system works. And when you actually have examples, you really do get to visualize, oh, okay, so these banks are lending to this industry or corporation, and it's making them really profitable, and so they have to go lobby Congress and the Fed for the bailout, and it's just it's really insane. There's a lot of examples. I think it would be excessive to cover all of them in one episode, so I was thinking maybe divvying it up just to make it fun, not to milk this series, but to milk the series, because I think the more time and attention we can get, the more the more it's going to be engraved in people's minds, so they can like recognize it when they hear a story. Maybe this gives them like inside or maybe outside trading information to make moves on, or just it's pattern recognition too.
No, yeah.
Right.
So like, I was just looking at the example, like kind of going through the chapters, and there's some like Penn Central. There's some good examples that really show how a lot of these big corporations and companies are nationalized and have been nationalized through the years since central banking has happened. So which
is the goal. The ultimate goal,
of course,
in this book is world socialism.
Nationalization. Yep. Yeah.
Which I think is debatable because of my Longan thesis that I've subscribed to.
Well, that brings the rules of the game may have changed then, right? So
I think
that can be, so what we're doing now is we're reviewing this book specifically, which was written, and what was it?
94.
Latest was 94, right?
This is the update. This is a second look.
The rules may have changed, right? So, I think that obviously that big governments and central banks are obviously trying to nationalize corporations, stuff like that, or whatever, to protect the cartel that they hold, protect, they don't want competition.
You can see a bifurcation in the cartel if it means that, we covered this in chapter 1 too,
right?
Where the participants in the cartel were already like staunch competitors and at odds with each other.
Yeah.
And they came together to make this compromise. Like, hey, well, we like our power. We want to, keep things hunky-dory around the world.
Right.
And that works out great until there's something that's threatening their power.
Right. Yeah. And they'll do anything they can to keep it, manipulation, change the narrative or whatever it may be. These guys run their lives on a P&L solely. That's a profit and loss. They don't necessarily have any empathy or consideration or care for anybody. So it's a profit and loss lifestyle that they live. It's kind of scary.
They're people too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
This was a good rip. People, if you like what you heard, make sure you rate, subscribe, and review. You can find this on the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast network. Just search Bitcoin Made Simple and whatever podcatcher that you utilize. And rate it 5 stars, leave a nice review. Tell us if you liked it. Tell us if you hated it. And get yourself a Bitbox if you haven't already. Again, that's Bitbox, the Bitbox 02. And that is shiftcrypto.ch. Our friends in Switzerland. God bless them. I hope they're doing okay under the Devosian tyranny that they're being forced to deal with. So God bless y'all, and thanks for doing Satoshi's work and making these great gadgets that help people be self-sovereign with their wealth and to avoid the Mandrake mechanism that we also get into, but essentially everything that makes the chicanery of this book possible. So anyway, Jim, any last words from you? Where can people find you?
Nowhere.
Or don't find Jim.
Just kidding. Basically Twitter. That's it. But no, I mean, yeah, this is good. Next week's gonna be good. We'll split it up, chapter 3, get some good examples. Just keep stacking sats. Don't overextend yourself. And
yeah, all you boomers out there, you might be listening. If you you should be the wiser, especially if you're in Bitcoin, sir or madam. So
no comment.
No comment. But yeah, we're seeing the hens come home to roost. Don't be in denial. You saw this coming. Don't do stupid shit. Live within your means. It's gonna get tough. Suck it up, Buttercup.
Now's the time to go to work. Now's the time to go to work. But
yeah,
it is up to you.
So some of them are retired. I say some because boomers have to work under these conditions too.
Sure. I know. Yeah, never mind. But yeah, till next time.
Till next time, I'm Phil Gibson at Mr. Pseu, MRPSEU. Find me on Twitter. And Movies Plus, go check it out. Good stuff happening over there. And we'll see you next time. And remember, unlike this book, to own your failure, because God knows our so-called leaders do not.
Word.
Peace out, Sarna. Adios. Later.
Toodles.